Hello and welcome back to another episode of 100 Days of Code with me, Lily Code. Thank you for joining me. We're on day 71 today and we're going to continue with our new course, Sean Wassells' React course, which is only a 5-hour course. And I've been really enjoying the content so far, so let's just continue to see how it goes. And I'm getting more brazen nowadays, so if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe because it means the world to me and more people can see these videos. So thank you so much just for joining me anyway. And have a wonderful day. I always say that at my end of my videos, but I'll start it off today with have a wonderful day, seeing as I'm flipping the script on everything here. So let's get into this. So we're looking at Sean Wassells' course. I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. And we seem to have an error, so let's figure this out and then we can progress. So oh yeah, this object, cool, yeah, okay. So we have our greeting here. We were trying to pass through an object in our, when we were defining our greeting component. So here we're using our greeting component and what it's expecting in this greeting component in the props. So this did have props coming in, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so this was accepting props and we can destructure the props in here like this, so we can say name and number of messages, and then we can just say, we can show these down here. So we take in our props, we say what we want to pass in when we're defining or using this greeting component, and then we can actually use them down below. I'll have to check out my automatic prettier settings here because this is adding spaces for me and it doesn't do that in work. And you know, I need to make sure that that's consistent, not with work and my home computer, but I also need them to be happening in work too, so I should just compare those configurations. Anyway, side note, you know, let's just get back to what we're doing here. So name is a string actually, so we pass that in as a string and the name is going to be Lily Code. Lily Code, coding along, singing a song, that's me. And then we'll type in our number of messages and we'll make this, you know, 1,000 or whatever you'd like, or what's a realistic number of messages? 21. Don't know where I got that number from. But so now if we reload, there we go. Good evening. You have. So we should see this coming through because we've passed through our props. And then we're saying name and number of messages. So good morning. And then you have, this should be down here, number of messages. And name should also be here. So dependent on whether it's the evening or the morning. So 21. Okay, 21 is showing and so is Lily Code. So perfect. We're passing through our props. And we're going to continue. Okay, so now we're just in our app.js and we're going to be looking at an input. So in here we're adding an input and placeholder. So let's keep watching. Okay. My laptop is giving me an electric shock. So we're not actually going on with this. I'm not sure what he was explaining there for a moment, but the other stuff that came then after we had already done. So he was just talking about something and then went on to do the props. So I'm moving on. And now we're looking at how to render a component conditionally. So great, very valuable skill. Very good, cool. So as always, I just watch the video a bit and then I code along. So okay, great. So what we're doing now is we're going to conditionally render our greeting component. And what we're going to conditionally render it on is if we come back to our greeting here, we can see we have our greeting component defined. And down underneath the definition of the component, our function definition, which is defining this component, we can say if name is null, so name, and then with an exclamation mark in front of it means if there's no name or name is not there, the opposite of having a name, then we want to return null. And this will return here before we've executed anything else in the component. So we will see that should do something. Oh, of course. So also what we need to do is this is saying if the name coming in from the props is null. So when we go to our apps.js, if we then take out the name and we don't show a name and we save it, we'll see that we don't get the name, the greeting component showing at all. And that's as expected because we're coming in here. When we call the greeting component from another component, we're injecting this component in here now. And all that injecting that in is doing is running the function that's defined in that component. So when you use the tag like this and you say, okay, I want to use the greeting component, which is exactly what we see here. We just use the tag and we say we want to use it in another component and we import it into the component where we want to use it. Then all this is doing is running that function in that other component. So if we open up our greeting here, this is just running this function for us. So, and these are just some comments down here, so that's not important. But when it comes in here, basically it starts to run this function and it's taking in the two props name and number of messages. And then we can see straight away on line 7, as soon as the component is running, it says if we don't have a name, return null. And this returns out of this function altogether. And we don't return anything. So that's exactly what we see. That's the desired action there. So we can conditionally show or hide the greeting component with this code that we just typed if no name prop has been given. So if we give a name prop again and say, let's give a new name, Paul, and save, then if we have a look, good evening, Paul, you have 21 messages. So absolutely swimming. Cool. Yes, and what we can also do is conditionally show other things dependent on the logic that we put in. So in here in our greeting, we have this, you have number of messages, and the number of messages is being passed in from the props. And currently we're passing in the value of 21. So this is us here using the greeting component, injecting it into the app page, the app component, and passing through the props of 21 for number of messages. Or passing through the props number of messages with the value 21, I should say. So then if we come back to the greeting component here, we can add a bit of logic down here. So we could say if number of messages, which is NO, number of messages is equal to 0, then show nothing. Else show the paragraph you have and however many number of messages you have. So I am missing a question mark. What happened there? Aha, okay. And then here we want our ... So this is in the case that this is true. So this is a ternary with a statement, a question mark, and a ... So if this evaluates to true, so if the number of messages does equal 0, we'll get true. Then we show the first bit. So just show null. In the case that it returns false, show you have number of messages. So if we now go back, we can see now we have 21 passed through. We see our greeting being rendered on the page here, and we have good evening, Paul. So now if we go back to our app.js and we change this to 0 and save, let's see what happens. There you go. We still have good evening, Paul. That's part of the greeting component. But further down, we have some logic to not show the messages paragraph if we have 0 messages. So that's what we've just seen. So that's super. So cool. So if you don't want to show a component or a specific element, you return null. And this is a very common, thing to do in React, that you might want to show one thing given one condition or another thing given another condition. So this is an important concept. So if we return undefined, we'll get an error. So we should return null, not undefined. Or as well, if you accidentally don't return anything from a component, you'll also get an error. So let's test that out. So here's our return block. Let's just comment everything out and see what happens. Because Sean said this should give an error. There we go. Unexpected token. Okay. Okay, so... Well, I think we still have an error, So yeah, you can't return nothing. What about if we just returned just literally an empty fragment? I think that still counts in my book, but let's find out. Okay, yeah, so it sort of breaks everything. And let's have a look at the terminal here. Okay, and then it's just telling us we have some unnecessary unused usings, which are just warnings. They're not actually errors. So we broke our whole page. So and this is coming from... Oh, I did that in the app. I should have done that in our greeting, because our greeting is being injected in somewhere. Of course, if we just get rid of the whole app component, we'll break everything. So, yeah, we get unexpected token if we just have an opening and a closing parenthesis. What about if we put it up here? Well, what about if we just remove the return statement altogether, actually? Let's see what that does. Okay, so here's our error. We get module building failed. Unexpected token. So yes, you cannot return nothing from a component, which makes sense. Like, why would you make a component if there isn't something that you'd like to do with it? But good to see that in action. So next we're going to look at how to display lists of components, because this again is an incredibly common task in React. So great, I'm really liking this course. And he just said, although it's very common, he can't begin to tell you how many times he's seen it done incorrectly. So I'm really looking forward now to seeing Sean's way of doing this, because he certainly knows the wrong way to do it. So that's great. Cool, so we're going to create an array of people in our app.js. So we're going to create an array here just up the top. So we will say it's actually done outside of the function declaration for the component. So I'll say const people is equal to an array of objects, and the first object is the key value pairs, name, John, age 50, hair color brown. Cool, and then we want to add a second person, so we just add a second object into this array, and we'll say name Lucy, age 30, and hair color red. Cool. And yeah, there can be anything you want. Let's add one more person. He's still going here. So we will add Dwayne. So again, you just do a comma, you add your other object. And why? I don't like how the syntax has gone awry there. Ay, 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 mamma mia, what's going on? So I'll just close them. I'll also right click and say close others. Just get rid of everything else, and let's just make sure that this is staying in line, feeling fine. So I'll move that back, then I'll open my object, and perfect. Okay, it just wants to move that in there anyway. What about if I move this down? Because that's the way that should be. I don't know why that's doing that, to be honest. Must be some sort of, linting I have going on. This is not an equals. We are minusing. I think that could literally be why that was doing that. No, it's still doing it. Okay, that's fine. Okay, yeah, fine. If you want to stay there, that's fine with me for today. So then we will say name Ted. Age 20. Why is this just formatting all over the gaff? 20, and then we'll say hair color purple, because Ted is exciting with his purple hair. Sometimes he walks around in his underwear. Oh, Ted. Right, so perfect. And then we can just add our semicolon because, bada bing, bada boom. Now it's formatted correctly. Nice. Okay, great. Was wondering about that. Cool. So now we have an array of people. And now we want to display these. So we'll loop over them in order to display them. So first of all, we're going to create a new file in our source directory. And we're going to call this people list. So new file. And we will say people list.js. Cool. And now in here we will create this component. So we've done this loads of times during this. So export const people all around. There's a list of them. People list is equal to a arrow function, like so. Perfect. And then we've already exported it. Great. So and what Sean has done as well is he has imported React from React, but we don't need to do that anymore, so I won't bother. And then we also want to add our props here, which is going to be people. I just wonder, I wonder, it gives you one space, but then what if you save? Then it gives you the other space. Okay. So now in our app component, we can import people list from here. So we'll import people list, yes, and it's a named export. So people list, and just hit enter, it completes it for you. But if you're not sure of how that got there, basically we're in the app here and we're staying within the same folder. So it's just dot and a /, and then you can see all the different files that are there, and we want people list because that's where we're getting this people list from. So perfect. Cool. People, keeping on saying people is so confusing. Well, it's not really, but you know when you just keep on saying a name, your brain's like, or like a word, my brain goes a bit insane. Insane in a membrane, inside of the brain, what? So we will remove this spinner because we don't need it, and then I will add my people list. And we're going to pass it the parameters of people. Just keeping on saying people, it's weird on the brain. Okay, just looking at his people. Anyway, cool. He keeps saying people. Of course he does. I mean, we're looking at the people list, but it's a funny word when you keep saying it for some reason. Oh, brilliant. Cool. So now we're going to just loop through this. So if we go back to our people list here, we can add a return statement, and that's just going to be looping through these people that were passed in from the props. So here we can say return people dot map, and then we can map through each of these people, and the way we'll map through them is by calling them a person. You can give this any name you want, but this makes sense. This is for one of the items in the array. So for each iteration of the loop, it will be an individual person that we are looking at. And then we can shape our data that we want to see coming out here. So this should actually be, yeah, an arrow, and then just, okay, so we're missing a curly bracket. What are we missing? Well, I still have another, yes, we are missing that. Okay, so then what we can do here is use these parentheses because we actually want to return some JSX code. So we're going to have a div. Okay, so we don't use our curly brackets if we have the JSX code coming back. Very interesting. Okay, then I'll tab in. So I have H3, we want a H3, and this is going to be people.name. Or person, sorry, because we're looking at an individual iteration of the loop here. So we're looking at the first object in that array, which was the first person in the list. So as we go through each map, we're looking at this in the first iteration, this object in the second iteration, and this object in the third iteration, or this person, and this person. And for each iteration, there's 3 different properties on this object. We have a name property, an age property, and a hair color property. So when we loop over this particular object, when we loop over the people, we're getting each person individually. That's what that map is doing. We're getting person, 0, 1, 2 in the array, because arrays don't start at 1. This is position 0, first person. This is position 1, second person. This is position 2, position 1, 0, 1, 2, position 2, the third person. If that's confusing, don't worry. Basically all we're doing is going through this array, which has 3 objects in it, and looking at one person at a go. So that's why as we loop over the people, .map is just going over them. We're saying, give me the person, give me the first thing in that array, the person, and that just happens to be a person, which is why we've called it person. So we're going to say person.name. We want to extract out the properties now of this object. So person.name, because we're looking at one individual object within that array, so we can pull out this specific data of that particular object that we're looking at in this loop's iteration. So we have a H3, then we'll add a P tag. Sorry if all this language is confusing to you. Just keep watching along, you know, and you will pick it up eventually. It just takes a little bit of time. I know it's all a bit out there, but you just get more and more and more used to it. And if you're someone who knows this stuff, absolutely fabulous. You know, it's funny when you look back and you see that this stuff actually does take a little bit of a moment to grasp. It's a new language. You're learning a new language, a programming language that comes with its own set of rules and terminology like any language. So that's all you're doing. You're just learning a language. And if you're bad at learning languages, I've been trying to learn Spanish my whole life. You always hear me saying, hola, blah, blah, blah. I'm not really great at it. But still haven't mastered Spanish, and I'm getting better at coding. So also don't think that just because it's like learning a language, that if you're bad at learning languages you can't do this, because I'm not great at learning languages. I'd like to say I'm constantly trying to improve, but still I've been at it for my whole life and I'm still not, you know, couldn't even hold a conversation with someone Spanish. So although it's similar, with time and perseverance you'll actually get further with learning the coding languages. So yeah. And then I'll just move this up here and add my semicolon at the end. Cool. Okay, so why did he do that? So he's just, we could wrap the whole thing in a div, which it already is. People. People is people. People, 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 people. Sorry, so, oh yeah, so here I'm just passing nothing. So I need to pass my people, of course. So let me do that. If I just pass in people, we should be doing a little bit better. Okay, great. So now we can see our loop is executing. We have our map is working, and we're showing each person as we iterate through. So that is super de duper. And now what he's doing is just saying we could wrap this in a fragment. Sure, it's already wrapped in a div, but let's just follow along. So what he's doing is, from here. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So if we want our return statement to wrap this all in a fragment, we add our brackets, because we need our return statement to be in these brackets, and then we move this up here because that should be inside, and then we need to add our fragment around this, of course, because now there's people.map and div on the same level. So now we say fragment, which has been imported from React because that's where it comes from. So great. And I'll move this to the bottom because it should be wrapping all of that different code. And then we need a curly bracket. Like so. And something still looks off there. Oh, yes. This should be outside of our fragment. I just put that in the wrong place because if I go back there to what I had, here we have our fragment. Then we have... No, that's correct. Okay. Okay, so he opened his curly bracket here and closed it down here. So this one is surplus. And then the fragment is closed outside of all this. Oh, right, and save. And okay, so now we have fragment. These two should be in. This should be up as well because they're all on the same line, really. Yeah. Then we have our fragment. Okay, perfect, and it's working. So you just have to make sure that your where you're opening and closing your tags, that they align. So here I have an open pink bracket. Get brackets per colorizer, guys. If you're using Visual Studio Code, it's very handy. You can see here now I have the same colors, and I also have another extension, this rainbow thing, which shows you exactly which line of code these are adding up on. So if I just quickly go to my extensions, I'll tell you what these are. So I have auto rename tag. What that's doing is when I open a bracket, so say if I change this, it auto changes with me. That's because of that extension. Brackets per colorizer is making these brackets match and be the same color. So here I can see my yellow, and this is the matching yellow. So, you know, it just makes it a bit easy for you. Then where's the one that's coloring indent rainbow? Is the one that's making these colors on the indentation. So again, you can easily see what's going on. So perfect. And let's continue. Perfect. What? Now he's saying we can get rid of the return statement and brackets too. So let's find out why, because this is one statement. But I mean, really, in real life, I haven't seen any of these components in work ever be one line to have this returned like a singular statement, so you can get rid of the return and the opening and closing brackets. It tends to be more complex, not more simple in the workplace, I've found. So, but then again, this guy seems to know what he's talking about, so let's listen. Okay, so he said, seeing as it is only one statement, even though it's a pretty big statement, it is still only one statement. We're mapping through something and we're displaying a section of JSS code dependent on that. We can use JavaScript's arrow function abbreviation, which we did see in yesterday's video. So we can remove the bracket and the return and just keep the opening bracket and then remove this. I mean, that's cool. I like that. And then all of this can go back. It is cool, but I haven't seen a real life use case for it just yet. And that's how we display a list of components in React. Yeah, it is. We can see it working here. Yeah, very true. And he said that next, that oftentimes in React we want to get even more modular, and you might want to split out the list item into its own component, which that's what I've seen. So say an example I had recently in work was I was making an accordion, and an accordion is just basically similar to a list, but when you click on a button, the content drops down. So you can have many items in an accordion. So I had an overall accordion component with accordion item components inside, so you were looping over the accordion item and showed however many buttons you wanted to be able to click on to drop down and show the text, and this was housed in a greater accordion component. So yes, exactly what Sean is saying and what we're going to implement now. Cool, so we're going to start off by creating a new file called people list item. So we'll just go a new file, people list item.js. Perfect. And now we just define it as we always do. So we will say const export const is how we're doing it now, which is very cool. Const, and then we do a named import, const people list item, and this is going to be equal to an arrow function, and we don't have to export because we've already done it, which is super cool. So what we want to take in again is a person. Well, not again, this time it's a person, because we're looking at an individual person here. So why didn't that do that for me that time? So if I do my curly brackets, it gives me a space. Okay, so what about if I just do one? Do one, it finishes it. Then I write person and save. And I don't get the space. Okay. If you want to be like that, Visual Studio Code. I'm only messing. Cool, and then we'll just take this code that we were mapping over. So, and because this is our specific person item, so it's just a wrapping div with our individual content related to our person. So we'll put this into our people list item, because this is the list, the exact item. So in this place, the person, we could have just called this person item, but however, it's people list item, which does make sense. And then we just want to display this in here. And again, rather than using curly brackets, he's just using normal parentheses. So okay, and then we'll tab this in. So I'd like to see, like, can I use both? Surely, of course I can. So yeah, I can. I just haven't really seen Or am I going mad? So yeah, now we just need to finish off our people list, so then I'll test it out. So now in our people list component, we can import our people item. So we will import, we need to do a named import because we put the export at the top of the function like you see here. So it needs to be imported inside these brackets. So we say people list item, which will give you an error if you have not exported the function named. So just be aware, if you've exported the function in the top line, you must use these curly parentheses. If you haven't exported it at the bottom of the file, then you leave out the brackets and you import it like this. So it does make a difference, and you will get an error if you mix and match those. So I'm sorry if I'm confusing you guys, but this is making sense to me just because I have a bit more experience and I've already done Max's course. And I tried to import it one day with the brackets when I didn't need them because I'd exported at the bottom of the file like this, where you say export default people list, right? And then I tried to import it like this and it wouldn't load. I was getting an error and I had no idea what was going on. And the only error in the end was that I did not need these brackets. So you need to be aware of which approach you're using, and just if you're unsure, look at all the other files in the project that you're currently working on, look at the tutorial you're working on, and just make sure that those things are matching, you know. So whatever approach they're using, follow that same approach, and then eventually as you keep on practicing, you do start to see these things that are, you know, little caveats. Well, not caveats, this is just how you do it, but you just become more aware of it, and you normally become more aware of it by making mistakes. That's what happened to me, you know. I had an error, didn't know what was going on, I was poking around in the code for a while, and then eventually I figured it out, and then you just sort of don't make that mistake again, you know. And in the beginning that can happen a few times, you might make the same mistake a few times, so that's okay as well, guys, really. So just takes time. Just keep practicing. Don't get disheartened. Have hope. You're more than capable. You can do this. If I can do it, you can do it. We can both do it. Really. So. Oh, cool. Yeah, of course. So then what we're going to do, not of course, it's only obvious once you know how, so we're all learning here. So then what we're going to do is, as we map over our people list and we get each person, we're going to now display the people list item, and here we're going to pass in our person because that's what we've requested and that's what we have on each iteration as well. So we've set this up now that as we loop we have a person because we're mapping over them, and then we're passing that person through as props because we're expecting that prop in our people list item. And then we've just done the rendering here, so this will all get injected in here and we will have each person. So let's reload and see what's going on there. Great, so we still have our same list here. And now just for pig iron, let me check. This is still going to work with curly braces, I know it. So let's try that because I don't normally use the regular parentheses. What? I feel like I'm going mad with that one. Oh. Okay. So this is saying nothing was returned from render. So we don't have a return statement in here. So if you're not using a return statement, this must mean return as well, because that's how you add your return block, isn't it? You say return and then you open up your parentheses. So this must mean straight away the JSX code is coming, and that's why you can do it like this, because you're not saying return and do something else. So that's why you're not wrapping it in the greater function. And this is the shorthand way of doing it. It's because we're only returning one thing. So this is just a shorter ES6 way of returning. If you only are returning one thing, which in this case, one statement. Sean is saying this is one statement. I mean, I guess it is. I'm not really, 100%, but it's becoming more clear. it's becoming more clear. So that's why we have them. This is the shorthand ES6 function definition. Normally we would have the curly brackets. If we had more going on and a return statement, you'd have your return, then you'd open up your regular parentheses. Yeah, so we have this error. Bada bing. So we have this error here. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop, and you see this error a lot, or at least I do. So at the moment we don't have an ID because we didn't give the people in our list an ID. So what we can use for their IDs for the moment is their name, just to see how this actually works. But what this error means is that when we are using our people list item here, and we're looping over something, we need to give each item in the list a key. So you literally just need to add that key property. That's what it's expecting when you get that error. So here our key is going to be person.name because they are unique for the moment. And now the error goes away and we have our list still showing. Perfect. Okay. So another thing that you could do, but it's not recommended, don't do it, it can cause performance issues, is you could use the index in the array. So array like person. So in order to get the index, you would go person like 0, you know, which person, which, so up here you would have to actually specify at which loop in the array you're at and then use the index, but that's not recommended, so don't use the index. Oh yeah. All right. Okay. Right. So we do it here. So when we're mapping over each function, we say person, and then we can say index, and then down here you could use index, but you shouldn't. It's not recommended. So don't use the index. Create a unique ID property. Even the name isn't really recommended. So what we would do if we wanted to do ID, just to show you what I would think would be the best approach, we would say person.id, but our person doesn't have an ID property at the moment. So if we reload this should give us an error because we don't have ID on this person as we're looping over. So if we go back to our app, up here we can add an ID property here. So we'll say ID 1. Let's give it 0 just because that's the same as the actual value of where this is in the array. This is at position 0 in the array. So just to stick with the same way that arrays are actually being numbered, we'll start at 0, 1, and then 2. So ID of 2, and then it will be able to find this ID property and use that as the key, and they're definitely unique. So as were the names, but just going forward, if you had a bigger application with loads of names, they might not be unique. Cool. Okay, great. So now we're going to look at click events and click handlers. This is great. Cool. Okay, so he's just saying when we do want to use an on-click handler, we would do something like this. So, and I'll just show you this as well because it is valuable. So in our people.map in here, this is where he has added this. So we could have a button and say on click. I would always give it a capital. He has not given it a capital, but that's okay. And then this would be equal to do something. So some function that you want to run when you click this button. So this is the standard JavaScript way. So we're going to see like what the right way to do this in React is now, because this doesn't look like it to me, but and then if we had an input, we would have an on change event. So input, and then this would be on change, and we could do something else, because you can't have two functions with the same name and the same component, so do something else. So yeah, React doesn't stray too far from this sort of syntax, but it does have slightly different syntax, because I was thinking, but he's just explaining it in full, so very, very helpful. Oh shoot, so in JavaScript these are all in lowercase, like this. God, I haven't used vanilla JavaScript enough. And in React and Angular we use Camel Case. So yeah, I thought that this bit was looking, he had them lowercase and I was like, that looks weird, so I just changed it. But he's shown us vanilla JavaScript here. Cool. Yeah. Great. So now let's actually implement this for real, what we actually want to do over in our people list item, in our app.js, sorry. So in here, underneath our people list, where we've injected in our people list here, we're going to add a button, and we're going to add a function on click, or a property on click that's going to do something, and then we use the parentheses in React, and then we can close off our button and pass in the name of the function that we want to run on click of this button. So we can just say click me inside the two button tags, and this will show the text click me on the button. So this is where you put the text that you want to show on the button. So I'm a button, whatever you like. I'm a button. Yeah. Yeah, so God, he's explaining this so well for such a short course. Like, this is 5 hours worth of a course. Very valuable. So basically, if we create a new function up here called const, and then display alert is the name of our function. This is going to be an arrow function. So as always, baby, like so. And then we can say alert, hello, Joe. Any Joes watching? Your favorite today. And then down here, when we're actually running this function, we just pass it into this on click with our two parentheses, but we do not do what we would normally do and say we want to run the function, because if we do that, it literally runs the function. All we want to do is have a link up to the function, and then once we have a link, when we click it, it goes and finds it, and then it runs the function. So you just pass the name into these JSX brackets. So now, oh look, yeah, so that's from when I had the parentheses in there. Now it's not going to run. If we find our button and click it, there we go. So why do I have this extra semicolon? I got a semicolon floating around in my code. Where is it? I don't know. So it's just over I'm a button. No. Okay. I don't really care that much. Just want to keep going and such. So if we click this button again, we can see we get our function running. And if we do, again, add in the parentheses, it'll just run on page load, which isn't what we want. We want these actions to happen when we click it. That's not the right way to set it up. I think even if you do want something to run on the page load, you wouldn't just, add in the parentheses there. You would do it through a use effect or something. So you just always pass the name of the function basically in the JSX code. This itty bitty button. Yeah. Yeah. God, he's explaining this very well. He's just saying what I did really, but he's still explaining it very well. Okay, and we could also use an anonymous arrow function in here to do this. So if we instead get rid of this function definition up here, display alert, and just create an anonymous function, so like this, and then just say alert hello Joe, and save that. Now if we click this button again, it should still work because we have an inline function now. Great. Cool. Great, so it still works, yeah. Yeah. Great. So now we're going to have a look at some styling, how we would style things. So up at the top of our app file here, we have an import called app.css, which has all of the CSS in here that comes with the React application to give it this grey background and this blue, the spinner and things, and the font to be a certain way. So we'll create our own CSS file in here. So we'll say new file, and this will be people.css. People, P-E-O, P-E-O. Cool. So, uno momento. Okay. Oh. Right, so he called this people list item.css actually. So excuse me, people list item.css, and then he imported people list item.css into our people list component. So up here at the top we can say import, and you just give the path. So people list item .css. Cool. And now we can go back to our new CSS file and add in some CSS to style these, each person each person in the list. So that's what we'll do. Yeah. Cool. So we'll add a new class to our div, and this is very similar to how we do it in HTML, but in React we just say class name rather than class, and then we can give this a string. So we'll say list item container. Perfect. And I'll just copy this and then paste it into our list item, and then there we go. There shouldn't be a space after that dot there. It should just be dot, the name of the class or class name. And then we can say border, and we'll say 1 pixel black, or let's give it a bit of a better color. So blue violet, and solid. Perfect. And now we should see a border pop around each of these people. There we go. Lovely. Cool. Okay. Cool, so we just added a border. He added a width 400, which makes sense because now they're all different widths. So we'll just add a width of 400 here. 400 pixels. Yep. Perfect, cool. Alright. And a margin top of 16 pixels. So let's do that too. Margin top 16 pixels, just for a bit of space. So cool. Okay. Hello, Joe. Hi. Okay, so now if I get rid of this, let's see. Okay. So here's our people list.js, yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we're going to install an npm package now as well and add styles with the use of an npm package. So let's have a look at that too. Okay, so I just want to check my CSS again. Border radius, he added a border radius too, so we have a border radius of 8 pixels, which will give this box a curved edge when we reload. So we can see now that we got the curved edge. And yeah, he also had this space in between, which is the margin. Yes, it's the margin. But I wasn't sure why that wasn't showing, and why did that only show when I had the border radius? Maybe they're dependent on each other. So now if we open up our dev tools here and just have a look at this, I can show this to you guys. So we use our little arrow to inspect individual items or boxes on this page. This is the box model. So if we hover, which I was told today by a colleague, we had a good discussion about that. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. It was a really great discussion. Very great discussion. So, and I will report all that back to you guys, because man oh man did I learn a lot today. So if I drop this down and we have a look at this particular box, which is one of the list item containers, as we loop, we're creating a new people list item. We're creating a new list item container, which is our top level div holding our name, age and our hair color. So then we can go to computed, and this shows you the different things, properties of this box. So the inner area of the box has a width of 400. That's what we specified. Great. There's no padding. We didn't add any padding. We have a border of 1. Yeah, we did say that. And then we have the margin of 16, which is the margin at the top here, which is giving us this gap in between our boxes. So super. Now let's go ahead and install this npm package. So styled components is the npm package, or we're going to use styled components, which you leverage that functionality with an npm package. Cool. Okay, great. So yeah, so we just come down to our terminal here, terminal, new terminal, and we will say npm install styled packages. This is the name of the package. Style components, sorry, components. Cool. And hit enter, and I added a few extra characters there that shouldn't be there, so I'll just cancel, go up, get rid of the hash and the bracket, and hit enter again, and then let that install. Great. Cool. And I'll just watch while that's installing. So yeah, that's going to install the styled components package. Yeah. And this allows us to write CSS inside our JavaScript component files. So okay. Yeah, love this. This is how I used this is how I've been using React, adding CSS classes to my React components. I sort of missed that you needed to install an npm package. I obviously did that in the very beginning of Max's stuff, and then we just didn't do it again. And every time, or maybe we just every time we spun up our package.json and did the npm install, that package was already in there. So, and he must have went through it in the beginning. He is so thorough I'm not saying Max didn't say it. I'm sure he did. I just forgot because we went over it once. And then in work, all the packages are already installed. So I sort of forgot that there was this connection, that this isn't inbuilt into React and it's a package, because this is how I use classes and add classes and style my React components all the time, not knowing that it was coming from npm. So that's great. Really happy we went over that again. So what we do then to use this is in our component where we want to use it. So this, our CSS file is called people list item. So the way we use it then, oh, this isn't what I do in work. Oh, no, this is new actually. What I was talking about was what you've seen me do in Max's components already. So maybe this is inbuilt in React. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to delete this styled components package, run our npm install again to make sure that we do not have this package, and just see whether or not we can do the functionality I was talking about that I use in work, that I thought was native to React. Maybe it is native to React, just so we can see what's going on. So here's our style components package we just installed. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to save. I'm going to come back to my terminal. This is how you can get rid of a package, or you can do it through the terminal as well. And then I'll do npm install, and now that package is no longer there. So this will install the node modules folder again, and that package hasn't been listed as one that needs to be spun up. So we've just hit the hour, but I'm going to finish this and then continue on with installing this styled components again tomorrow, and see what we're actually going to do with these style components, because I want to show you the way that I style my React components and that we use in work. You know, it's used by companies and stuff like that, and it's very common, so it's good to see. So now we can see that that's complete. If we go to our node modules here, we won't find styled components. So if we go down to S, C, D, E, F, and I should have shown you this before I deleted it, but you know, all I did was install and delete a package, so it just added another folder in here, and then I took out the command to tell it, oh, install that, so then it just didn't install it the next time I did npm install. So if I come down to SSS, like a little S, styled, so here we go, and STY at the end of ST. So we can see styled components is not there, right? So we've removed that package that we added with npm. Now we've removed it by just coming into our package.date and deleting the line and doing npm install again. Perfect. So now if I go to my people list item.css, if I change this, let's rename this to people list item.module.css. This is how I do it in work and in my projects. People list item.module. Then you can import this file in your people list item by giving it a name. So we can say import people list item styles, or whatever you want, you know. So I normally just say styles or classes from, and then you give it the import. So you say people list item and you give it the full import .module.css. And now how you use this down below, which is just more in keeping with the rest of the React JSX, you use the bracket notation, and then you can say styles, and then you access every single class in this file with a dot. So this is list item container. I'm not certain if we can have the dashes, but let's just save and see. So reload. Okay. So it's giving out people list item.css. No file or folder. So let's go to our console here and see where is this being fired from. So first of all, I'm going to change this to not a bracket delimited file, and instead do it like this, and then rename this as well. And oh no, I copied instead of pasted, sorry. So let's copy again and let's paste. Save. Let's reload. Okay, so we still have an error, so let's see what this error says. No file or directory, people list item.css. So where is it that we're importing this? In our app CSS. So let's go to our app. Elements console. No file, people list item.css. Okay. So where am I trying to use this? Do I need to do something else to do the module use? People list item, people list item, people list item dot module dot css. Yes. Okay, and then I'm just going to search for people list item dot css. So I still. Okay, yes, of course I can't find this because I didn't realize we still had an extra import in there. So now if we get rid of that, that's fine, and reset and save it again. So I knew we could use that dot module without having to do anything else. So that's, I thought he was going to start talking about that when he was saying styled components, which he wasn't. So we'll find out now tomorrow what styled components are and what this npm package does. But I find this a very handy way of applying styles to your React components, because it just looks pretty, in my opinion. So, and there's probably more reasons why you'd want to use it, but it looks pretty and that's good enough for me. So thanks so much for joining me, guys, on another episode of 100 Days of Code. I really appreciate it. Love you all. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves. Be kind. Give someone a smile. And just enjoy yourselves. Thanks so much. Bye.